Gameplay in the Persona series mainly revolves around exploiting enemy weaknesses to gain extra turns, but what if we no longer have that option? Welcome to RPG Challenge Runs, and today we find out if we can beat Persona 5 Royal using only guns on a fresh save file on the hardest difficulty. A quick rundown of the rules: we can only damage enemies using guns or skills that are gun elements, such as one-shot kill. That means basic attacks, insta-kills, showtimes and all-out attacks are not allowed, and obviously all physical and elemental skills are also banned. We're still allowed to heal, inflict buffs and debuffs, and use non-damaging items. Enemies hurting each other or themselves is also fine. But again, the only damage we're allowed to inflict must be gun elemental. We also can't use glitches, hacks or mods, and the DLC personas are also not allowed because they're kind of overpowered. My thoughts before starting the run are that this is going to be a tough one, since a lot of bosses and enemies are immune to gun damage later in the game, but it's still going to be possible, maybe just a bit of a grind at times. We start by naming ourselves Stormtrooper, known for their fantastic efficiency with guns, and as always, most challenges aren't possible during the tutorial week due to not yet having a gun or being forced to take certain actions or enemies just outright having too much health. But after we finish making our first lockpick, tutorial week is over and the challenge officially begins. Let's do this. As we work our way through Kamoshida's castle, it becomes clear that progressing and grinding XP often involves killing one enemy from the mob and then fleeing to gain a small amount of experience. Although you now get full ammo every fight in Royal compared to the original P5, it's still not a lot when you're playing on merciless difficulty and relying exclusively on guns to deal damage. We soon encounter our first enemy immune to gun damage, Berith, near the library books puzzle room. Luckily these enemies glow red so we can just avoid them. Then we hit our first roadblock with the exploding enemies tutorial. We just don't have enough damage. I go away to get Anne to level 7 to learn Dormina so we can sleep the enemies and then use gun attacks to trigger technical bonuses for even more damage. Job done. Our second hurdle is the mandatory Heavenly Punisher mini-boss in the church section. Our entire ammo reserves are only depleting about a quarter of his health, so my initial thoughts are that we need to be able to reflect physical damage back at him. The problem is that the lowest level persona that repels physical damage is our Haruki at level 35. The only other option is to fuse a Dekarabia at level 32 who can learn Tetrakan at level 33. Both of these options would require days if not weeks of grinding a level up. But then we remember that we're allowed to use gun elemental skills and not just the guns themselves. So we fuse a Kelpie and then fuse that with a Jack-o'-lantern to create a Baryon. He has a gun move Snap, which does medium damage in exchange for a small portion of our own HP. With that new move, we easily take the enemy down. There are in fact 6 gun moves in Persona 5 Royal: Snap, Double Shot, One Shot Kill, Dream Needle, Trickle Down and Riot Gun. Here's a list of how to get each skill card, as well as the personas who have the best gun skill by default. Just, for anyone who wants to try this challenge themselves. Since we can't hurt Beriths, if one ambushes us, then we're unable to escape and therefore can't do anything, so we're forced to quit to the title screen. The rest of the infiltration route was pretty easy though, including the mini-boss guarding the third Will Seed who's resistant to gun damage. The only real challenge was avoiding those Berith enemies. Kamoshida boss time. I was scared of the sheer damage he was dealing in the first phase, especially considering we couldn't fight back much, as we could not afford to waste bullets this early. Through repeatedly healing up, we slowly bring him down. Phase 2 was much easier than I thought, as his Shiho slave was weak to gun damage, but that brought us to the problematic Phase 3. You see, you're supposed to beat Phase 3 by sending a team member off to steal his crown while the others distract him with attacks, but we had all run out of bullets. Therefore, Joker was the only one who could attack, resulting in the distraction attempt failing every time as we slowly lowered his health through a combination of snap, healing and minor buffs and debuffs. This cycle needed to be repeated for almost 25 minutes before he finally fell. One palace down and now we're feeling much more confident. Before the second palace, we spend time getting our social stats up and buying better gear, though we're now out of cash, so we'll need to grind a lot more in the future palaces. Madarame's palace mostly offered very little challenge, except for the glowing red Shiki Ouija enemies who are immune to gun damage and therefore have to be avoided. just like those bereths that came earlier. Another problematic enemy came in the form of Koropokaru, you know, those gnome-like things who carry the green leaves for some reason. They can easily one-shot Anne on Merciless difficulty, getting another turn in the process, and they have some decent defense. Often the strategy here was to leave Anne dead on the floor until the very end of the fight, and then resurrecting her before the final blow so she could still receive XP. A huge challenge came from Yusuke's introduction battle too. Normally you're supposed to use Yusuke's ice attacks to chain extra turns in order to make this an easy fight, but only using guns meant we were seriously lacking damage output, especially when the bullets ran dry. To make matters worse, the enemies can inflict rage on party members to force them to use basic attacks, and remember, this challenge is an instant fail if a party member uses a basic attack once. Luckily, we have just enough items to cure rage from those inflicted by it, and with some lucky critical hits, we down 3 of them in one turn and somehow turn it around. That was one of the more nerve-wracking fights so far, especially since it's been a while since the last save point. A greater challenge will be coming soon though, Madarame's boss fight. You see, in the first phase, his mouth not only nullifies gun damage, but it drains it to heal itself. Additionally, the mouth can resurrect other body parts, meaning the fight could potentially go on for an infinite amount of time. Luckily, I had a plan, but it involved grinding a lot to get to a much higher level. We start by swapping out Morgana for Yusuke. This was a tough decision to make since we lose the AoE healing, but Morgana's gun is just too weak to continue with. Besides, you automatically receive a Media skill card from a mini-boss in the second half of Madarame's palace, so the healing is covered. Additionally, Yusuke will provide us with agility buffs for evasion and accuracy, and he also has a small chance to counter physical attacks. Our goal is to grind to level 24 so we can fuse a Naga, and then use the electric chair to itemize it into a counter skill card for Joker's persona. It's not a perfect strategy and is very luck dependent, but it's better than grinding to level 35 in order to get a persona that can outright reflect physical attacks. During the grind and clearing Madarame's palace, we do suffer a few more deaths, plus one time when Enraged Joker uses a basic attack, so we have to quit to the main menu, losing a fair bit of progress. We eventually make it to the final area, only to be roadblocked again by a mandatory battle against 3 enemies, all of whom nullify gun damage. It looks like we'll be relying on Naga's counter skill card for this one, because if not, we'll have to get a level 33 to fuse a Dekarabia and Isis who can learn Tetrakan and Makarakan respectively, or grind even further to 35 to fuse Arahabaki who fully repels physical damage. This is a huge roadblock. We reach level 23 after 7 hours of farming enemies because of the XP penalties, but then I realised that we wouldn't be able to itemize a Naga into a skill card anyway, since the electric chair doesn't unlock until after defeating Madarame and Royal. Well, we settle for the substitute, fusing a level 20 Yaxini who knows counter by default. I was still worried that this would not be enough since counter has only a 10% chance to work and Yaxini is weak to nuclear moves, but then I got the idea to get a Suzaku who knows Marin Karen. This ability brainwashes enemies into attacking each other. When only one enemy remains, then we can rely on the counter damage. The battle goes well and was extremely satisfying to watch. At this point I'm still nervous about Madarame's mouth since bosses cannot be brainwashed, but we spend the boatload of money we got from grinding on healing items, fuse an Oni with a good moveset and send the calling card. We start the battle against Madarame and my heart sinks. Even when we counter his mouth's physical moves, he nullifies the damage. All we can do is stall out the battle while desperately trying to think of a way of inflicting any damage on this part of the boss, but I genuinely can't think of anything. Luckily, Morgana has the solution. It seems this battle has a secret mechanic. If the battle drags on long enough, Morgana suggests sending someone to throw some nearby paint cans onto the boss, rendering him weak to everything. The run is saved. I genuinely didn't know that this was even a mechanic in the boss fight, as Madarame's first phase normally ends pretty quickly, but finding out new stuff like this is what makes challenger runs really fun. With that, his first phase is over and we move on to phase 2, which you might think would be easier, but oh no. On Merciless difficulty, damage is much higher for attacks that you're weak to. This means that Madarame's gang of elemental goons can easily one-shot any of my party members, and be rewarded with an extra turn for doing so. Things look extremely grim, as it's obvious we won't be able to solo this just Joker, since the enemies are just doing too much damage. The best strategy is to try to kill off the goons one at a time, until they're all the same element. We eventually get to a point in which he has 3 ice goons and 1 fire goon. but for some reason the Fire Goon is the only one who never attacks. We leave Anne dead on the floor because she'd just die in one hit anyway. Joker repeats a cycle of using Snap while Yusuke and Ryuji buff, heal and just try to stay alive. Towards the end, the Fire Goon starts to actually attack, so Yusuke is now being hit down as well. But somehow, Joker and Ryuji managed to pull it off with very little healing remaining. That was an incredibly tense fight. We used about 200,000 yen worth of healing items, but it was worth it. Before the third palace, we take a quick trip to Mementos. Sadly, the enemies here are giving tiny amounts of XP, so we just complete the requests and leave. We also play some billiards to raise our technical damage bonuses, and buy an imported protein from the sports shop to give to the shady trader Sakai in the Kichijoji alleyway for a souvenir whip. Although we obviously can't attack with this weapon, it does give Anne a luck +5 bonus, which is helpful for increasing the chance of inflicting ailments and critical hits, as well as minimizing the chance of receiving them. Going forward, we'll need to keep an eye out for melee weapons with these kind of passive effects, as they could be really useful. The third palace was mostly quite easy due to us being a bit over leveled. We still died a few times, and there was one annoying mini boss that was immune to gun damage, but we just used the Marin Karen brainwash strategy again. Kaneshiro boss time, and Piggytron slowly goes down by his repeatedly healing and using buffs and debuffs while Joker uses gun attacks. His bodyguards in the second phase also aren't too much trouble, but just when things are looking promising, we hit our hardest roadblock yet. Kaneshiro himself is immune to gun damage, and he exclusively spams a lullaby snap combo to deal gun damage to anyone who's asleep. That means that even if we reflect his attacks back at him, he takes no damage. Additionally, he and his guards can't be inflicted with brainwash, fear or despair. We tried to stall the fight, but he won't use any other moves, so we just quit out to the title screen. Is this really the end of the run? After all, none of our teammates can learn anything useful by leveling up. Well, I resort to looking on the wiki for help. Now, according to the wiki, Kaneshiro himself can use the electric move Zyonga, and can also use the powerful physical move Make It Rain, providing he has enough money in his bank. Therefore, after almost an hour of pondering, we swap to Morgana, who's weak to electric, to bait Kaneshiro into using the electric move. If we can get him to start using the electric move, we can work on reflecting it back at him. We also spend money opening some of the golden pay doors in his palace in case this is linked to his ability to make it rain in some way, but all of that is secondary to the best idea yet. According to the wiki, Kaneshiro only blocks brainwash, fear and despair. That means we should be able to inflict rage on him to make him use basic physical attacks, which we can counter back at him. We load up an earlier save file, and after a bit of grinding and getting better gear, we go in to try again. Piggytron is much easier on this second attempt, and although I lost the footage of the second phase, I can tell you it didn't go much better than the first. Also, the wiki is wrong. Kaneshiro himself is immune to rage, which is something they should probably edit. At this point, we're running out of ideas for ways we can even inflict a single point of damage on this guy, since poison isn't a thing in Persona 5, and we can only inflict burn if we first hit him with a fire move or gunshot from a modified gun, both of which we cannot do. Our final gambit is to fuse a Sandman and level him up to 26 so that he learns Null Sleep. This skill is exclusive to Sandman, meaning no other Persona in the game learns it by default or by leveling up. My hope is that Kaneshiro's AI won't be stupid enough to keep using Lullaby on an enemy who's immune to sleep, so he'll switch it to his electric move Zyonga instead. Then we can start exploring ways to reflect the electric attacks back at him, like creating a Persona with Makarakan. During the third attempt, I'm genuinely ready to throw in the towel, but then something incredible happens. Kaneshiro finally used Zyonga. It seems as though an ally has to suffer the forget ailment from the Hitman enemy's headbutt attack, then Kaneshiro will follow up with a Zyonga instead of a lullaby. We can't get him to do it a second time, but it's enough for me to try a fourth run. This time we fuse a Pisaka who knows stagnant air, so that the Hitman is more likely to inflict forget on us, and a Clotho which can be fused into a Makarakan skill card during a fusion alarm, the skill which can reflect magic attacks. This feels like one hell of a long shot, and who knows how we'll be able to inflict damage once the Hitman disappears towards the end of the fight, but we still have to try. This really is our last shot. Here are our personas going into the fight one last time. Oni for solid balanced attack and defense, Shikiwiji for null physical and gun if things get tough, Sandman for null sleep, and Pisaka for our new stagnant air Makarakan combo. Piggytron is again no trouble, so let's move on to phase 2. We start by taking down his defensive bodyguards since we don't need them at all. Things look promising as we get inflicted with Forget, but this time Kaneshiro refuses to follow up with Zeonga, and instead just ends up using his lullaby reflected back at him to put himself to sleep. Again, we drag this part of the battle out for almost half an hour, repeatedly using stagnant air Makarakan, but Kaneshiro just won't use that Zeonga move. I don't know what caused him to use it that single time in the previous attempt, but I'm guessing it was just a fluke and it won't be happening reliably. As Kaneshiro hits Joker down at the ground with a technical bonus, I realise that the run is sadly over. The probability of Kaneshiro using Zeonga seems insanely low. Even if he ever does use it, there's no guarantee that he would continue using it enough to defeat himself with it being reflected back at him. I think it's probably possible, but the odds are so incredibly low that you'd need to sit in the same battle for an entire day to even have a slim chance, by which time you'd probably run out of SP or healing items anyway. Still, this was a really fun challenge and the first of many Persona challenge runs to come. Do you have any ideas what we could have done differently to beat Kaneshiro, or are you going to try this one yourself? Let me know down in the comments. Alright, GG guys, see you in the next one. Cheers.
Hey senpai! Next time we'll be doing a run of Persona for Golden, so please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. I'll see you there!